Welcome back, you filthy exiles, and I haven't done one of these guides for a very long time, but it sort of makes sense to do one considering that Delve is pretty much one of the best profit makers at the moment, and there's a number of reasons why. So in this video, we're pretty much going to go through a full overhaul. So this video is going to be really targeted for if you haven't played Delve before, or if you want to learn more about Delve. Obviously, I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours perfecting my ability to make currency in Delve, and it's my go-to every single league. Now, if you haven't seen my video from yesterday, I've actually done an updated guide on how to take down the Crystal King in an easy way. I tried to explain that and use a bit more sort of editing technique. But anyway, let's talk about delving for divines and basically an approach to tackling Delve, understanding Delve, and everything else Delve. This is what this video is going to be about, so let's get into it. And also, if you haven't liked and subbed to the channel yet, don't forget to do that. And anyway, let's jump straight into explaining how to delve for divines. Okay, so what exactly is Delve? Obviously, we've got the wiki page here, and we'll have this up in the background. We'll refer to now and again. Basically, what Delve is it's an endless dungeon, right? It's an endless mine. It keeps going. Well, it's not endless. It gets to like 60-something thousand depth, and Steve proved that one. But more or less what it is this is Delve itself. Basically, it's just like a deep delving mine shaft of which you just keep going down and down and down. Now, the unique thing about Delve is it's fantastic to make currency, and we'll talk about all the different strategies, but it has all these different biomes, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. But basically, as you go down, you can get access to different specialized uniques. We'll talk about that later in the video too. There's a lot to cover off in Delve. Now, fundamentally, you can go and farm currency in Delve. You can farm necromancer items. You can get +1 specter chests or curse rings right now. Breaches in Delve. You can get specific cold items, so they can be curse on hit rings and things like that, or hex on hit rings. There are bosses down in Delve, like the Grand Architect and my favorite one, the Crystal King. But there's basically this Harbinger down in Delve. There's these things called cities. We'll talk about that too. And specialized fossil nodes. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, fossils and resonators are a metacrafting material. They're basically a really easy way to get very targeted attributes onto gear. And that's one of the big benefits of Delve. This is the only place that you can get, for example, faceted drops, which would drop from a magma fissure, right? And this would be a Genix encounter. Now, this goes down, and this progressively gets harder and harder and harder as you go down from the start of the mine shaft. So the more you go down, the better the character you need to have. Now, for players that are really good at Delve and can delve down deep, you can pretty much farm Ubers. Some of the encounters with the Crystal King in the deepest depths of Delve, even from 600 to 700 with the wrong mods, can absolutely one-tap mirror tier characters. That's just how Delve is. It is a very difficult mechanic. It's not necessarily a mechanic where you're going to play zoom builds, and there are different ways that you can play early, like darkness runners and things like that. If you want more information around darkness run, we may cover that off in this video. But at the moment, the biggest advantage of Delve is around the currency that can be gained from fossils and resonators. We'll talk about that in a moment as well, but in particular, glyphics and whatnot. Now, it also has two different types of juices that you need to run Delve. The first being sulphite, which is this Voltaxic sulphite here. And then the other that you get from Delve is Azurite. So you get Azurite cavities. Now, the importance of Azurite is more or less based on the fact that you can take raw Azurite, you can go up to Nico, and you can purchase resonators. Now, resonators right now sell for about 2.3 chaos. They've dropped a little bit in the last few days per resonator. So you can get bulk Azurite by bulk resonators, and then basically sell them on the exchange now for ridiculous sums, including divines, which is where the title Delving for Divines comes from. Essentially, from every single run that you go down and Delve and you complete, you can get a ton of Azurite, bring that back up, like 15,000 will probably net you 1 to 1.5 divs, something like that, not to mention all the other drops, 4-socket resonators. We'll talk about all these things in the coming sort of, as we walk through the video. But more or less, that's what Delve is. It's an endless dungeon. You keep pushing down. It has biomes. It has mods. All these things we'll talk about in a moment. We'll cover off on biomes. But yeah, it's just a really, really good mechanic to basically play. It is consistent for XP, so it's quite easy to level characters up in Delve, and it's also consistent for crafting mats, just general bubblegum currency from cities, for example, ruined cities. And the other big advantage is I usually use it to get map completion from ruined cities as well. It's actually really good for map completion. So you can heavily sustain maps. Now, a question about gold. In the recent patch that came out, Delve now provides the same amount of gold that you would get in maps, is my understanding. So I've had absolutely no issues with just raw farming gold when I hit 0 and just keep going. The advantage of this is basically you can do, you outside of having to map, and we'll talk about the setup that I do for Atlas mapping and stuff like that throughout this video too. Basically, you're going to run like 4 maps tops to get your sulfite capped out, which is this meter here. And then, for example, you can go into your settlers. You can just juice the gold that you make out of Delve into your settlers, and then just have your settlers doing offline mapping the entire time while you're in Delve. And you can actually sustain the mapping in settlers from just delving. And in between, you're really just coming out of Delve to do, you know, a few maps to get your juice up, and then you're going back into Delve. So a lot of Delve players really don't map very much because you can just live in Delve these days because of the amount of sulfite that you can get from maps, which we'll talk about very shortly too. Anyway, that's a real high level overview of Delve. So let's dig into some of the more nitty gritty details. Okay, so the next question you might ask is, how do I get into Delve? All right, pretty simple stuff. So basically, you're going to access Delve from Act 4. So we're going to go to Highgate. Now, it's when you go into the actual mine encampment, that's the trigger point for Delve. So basically, you go up to Nico. So see how you have the mines here? You can go up to Nico, and then basically you'll be able to access the mine encampment from here. This will take you to like the very early sort of level 1 Delve. And then in the mines area, you can actually get some sulfite and whatnot as well. Now, the thing about accessing Delve early and getting into Delve early, and people ask this question all the time, when do I start delving? So I usually start delving when I get to like Act 7 or, 7, 8, or 9, and I start doing some like sort of intermittent delving. And the reason for that is, number one, it's really good for early XP to get your character up in level when you're early leveling a new character. And the other part of that is you get some early currency from Delve as well, which can be really useful, and item drops and things like that. So I sort of started, say, Act 8, Act 9. I go down and Delve, hit it a few times, and then basically come up and just alternate between the campaign. As soon as I get sulfite, go back down in a Delve, farm it a bit more, so on, so on. That's basically my strat to starting Delve. I don't have a perfect, like, this is when you should start Delve. Generally, my comment has always been, don't start Delve until you get to mapping. And then once you do get to mapping, then basically you're going to start leveling up your Atlas to get Delve and Sulfite nodes. And then you basically want to go hit a few maps, get your Sulfite up, go back to Delve, keep progressing Delve, so on, keep bouncing between the two until you sort of get to a stage where you can sustain Delve a little bit better, and you can get enough Sulfite from maps to sustain Delve to delve a little bit more. And then eventually, as you upgrade your delve components, and we'll talk about that in a moment, then basically you go from there and just keep delving throughout. But that's basically the strategy for early delve. So Act 4 is how we get into delve. We meet Nico at the mines here, and then basically we go down and we start sort of alternating and sort of switching between mapping and delving until we move more into delve and less into mapping, and then mapping just becomes a sustaining activity as opposed to an actual thing that you would do with a standard build. Okay, so the next thing we need to understand about delve is how biomes work. So biomes are really important in understanding basically where things drop. So you'll notice when you go into your Delve map, they'll have different patches around the map. I'm just trying to move my big head around so I can fit on the screen. You'll notice that there's big patches all around the place, right, that have different colors. These are actually referred to as biomes. Now, you'll notice something very similar in Path of Exile 2, and they really did try to make Delve sort of work in the Atlas map in POE 2, but I don't think it's been as successful as they thought it was, and hopefully they do figure it out. But for the case of Delve, it's really good. So the little patches in here represent different biomes. Now, the significance of biomes is different things can drop in different biomes. The other thing that you'll also notice is that see how there's always a mod That's very important to keep in mind. Certain mods or all mods are not the same. It's very similar to mapping. So if you have elemental pen, that's problematic. You can have things like increased ignite. In this case, 47% of maximum life is extra energy shield, which is very painful. You could have increased crit multi, things like that. And then you'd be wondering, why am I ripping or dying a lot in Delve? And it could be simply because of the mod on the biome, and the biome is too hard. So that's something that you need to keep aware of. Also, you'll notice cities. This is a city, for example. Now there are 3 different types of city. We have the abyssal chambers, we have the primeval chambers, and then we have the ruined chambers. Now the different cities, really, like, different things do drop in the different cities. But for the best thing, the most important thing to understand about cities is primevals are generally the best cities. And the reason why is because you can actually get Azurite caches, which can drop from 12 to 15,000 Azurite, depending on the depth that you're at, and totally top you up. And that's a huge profit generator. So it's worth doing all primeval chambers if you can. And then basically you'll see things like Crystal King will pop up in different biomes. In this case, this Crystal King has a lot of really nasty mods. So this one's actually quite hard to take down. But this is a significance of biomes. In more detail, we'll just pull open the... Okay, so when having a look at different biomes, there are different drop rates to when biomes become, I guess, or when they appear, essentially. So what we'll see here is, for example, early mines biomes, and also the drop rates change on different biomes too. So early mines biomes, when you're sort of going down at the very start of delving, you get metallic, you get serrated, you get pristine, and you get etheric fossils, predominantly, right? Not really worth a lot of currency. Same with fungal caverns, when you're sort of going down earlier and earlier. But as you go down deeper, different biomes become available. So abyssal depths, you basically have aberrant, bound, gilded, and lucent. Now, aberrant fossils I actually like because it's really good for crafting chaos items. Frozen Hollow, we start to get a lot better. So Shuddering and Sanctified fossils, and we'll talk about these fossils in a moment. Basically, these are really good drop fossils, right? So these drop in Frozen Hollow. But you notice, like, the depth or the weights here are 100, but then depths greater than 30 and under 52, right? So basically, it starts to tell you what depths things drop at. Now, with Magma Fissure, you've got Prismatics, Pristines are for life rolls, Fundamentals. These aren't really the best ones to get. There are better biomes to get them, to get different fossils from. And then Sulphur Vents start to drop and you get like Opulence, for example. Now, Val Cities, they start to pop up at about 32, depth 32. Abyssal Cities at depth 70. And Primeval Ruins will start to pop up at about depth 110. I've always stuck to like 130. This is basically when Crystal King becomes available. So just to recap, make sure you're double checking when you're delving the biome that you're in, and you can also target farm different fossils from different biomes. So if I wanted to get, for example, Scorch fossils right now, I could target farm this Magma Fissure biome and then just run all these nodes. It's very likely in the darkness that there'll be Magma Fissure biomes, and yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind is cities are very, very profitable as a general rule of thumb. You can get a lot of currency drop from cities, so watch out for these. Generally, when I do find cities as well, city biomes, they bleed into other cities. As you'll see, this is a triplicate city. So sometimes you can also have like 3 or 4 Crystal Kings linked onto a city, all different things like that. So these are some of the cool things in Delve that you can find. Okay, so why is Delve profitable right now? Well, basically, there's some crafting criteria for different builds that have sort of come out in the league that pretty much require Delve materials. And every time this happens, it basically shoots the price of Delve crafting mats up through the roof. So right now, glyphic fossils, which drop from time loss nodes in Delve, which start popping up at about depth 300, which is relatively easy to get to. These are 208 chaos each. These have dropped slightly, but they're up 39%. Hollow fossils, which just drop from like the straight up abyssal nodes. These are super easy. 104 chaos per hollow fossil, so it's basically half a divine, and these are very common. Like, I have these sprinkled all over my Delve tree at the moment. Faceted fossils, 69 chaos. Fractureds, again, these are from humid fissures. 25 chaos. Sanct is 8, and usually these drop in like stacks of 3 to 5. So on, so on. Resonators, 4-socket resonators, 100 chaos minimum. One socket resonators, they're slightly down at 2.2. They still sell. This is basically your biggest currency generator, and we'll talk about the strategy to work with this. Then we've got powerfuls, which got up to, this isn't even accurate. These were selling for about 10 chaos. And then, for example, the biggest one is curse rings. So curse rings, right? True curse rings, underground mod curse rings, not the Mirror of Calandra rings, which have negative downside. They're selling for 5 div, like minimum. Curse rings are insanely expensive, and this is because there's a mechanic with mercenaries that allows you to totally exploit curse rings right now to basically have curse bots. So yeah, these are basically you hit curse nodes, for example, and I'll outline what curse nodes are. Super profitable. But yeah, anyway, these are just some of the reasons why Delve is really, really profitable. Not to mention things like Crown of the Tyrant, for example. Let's just have a look at Crown of the Tyrant in the live. So Crown of, if I can spell properly, of the Tyrant. And this drops from the Crystal King. These are going for anywhere up to 30 div. So really, really, really profitable to farm Delve. Crystal King pops up at about 130 with an increased probability the lower you go. So at about 350 to 500, there's a good probability you're going to run into Crystal King. Sometimes you're unlucky, sometimes you're not. He is an RNG based find. But if he drops one of these or a Malevolence All's Uprising, you are absolutely laughing and rolling in the currency this league. Okay, so digging into more detail into how you set up Delve now. So we know about a Delve in general. We know about biomes. We have an idea of why it's profitable. So now we're talking about the more technical side of how you set up for Delve. So basically you have this thing called a Voltaxic generator. Now, as you delve deeper, you'll collect Azurite and you'll need to upgrade your minecart. Now, your minecart and your flares and your dynamite will allow you to break walls, will allow you to see in the darkness when you get stuck, and will allow you to have just overall a better experience in Delve and also allow you to delve deeper as well. So as you go, you'll upgrade your Voltaxic generator. Now, the general sequence that I go with is when I start delving, I focus on capping sulphite number 1. Then I focus on darkness resistance earlier on and light resistance. Then we want flares. We want flare radius. We want to basically cap that out, and then we want to max out our dynamite and our damage with our dynamite. I don't really worry about the radius. Now, when you're in Delve, you can use dynamite to also take down harder biome enemies and different rare bosses and stuff like that. You can also use them on things like Crystal King fights and things like that to do a lot of early damage too. So dynamite's actually really useful in Delve. Once you get to a depth where you just like depth 600 plus, where you just keep digging down, there's actually no more point to investing in darkness resistance and light radius. You really just want to max out your flares for when you need them, and you want to have a ton of sulphite capacity, because at that point your build is so strong, or should be so strong, that you can just delve all day long. And that's basically the idea. But that's how I set up my Voltaxic generator. That's the basic strategy. If I'm delving between 300 or 250 to 350, sorry, then I'll cap out darkness resistance and light radius. And the reason why is that's my strategy that I put together for delving. And we'll cover off on that very shortly around the different tacks that you can take to actually playing Delve. There's a number of different ways that you can tackle Delve, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, basically at 250 to 350 is what I generally put as like the optimum average player depth for Delve. You're going to get a lot of currency in this league, even just doing that. Obviously, the deeper you go, the more rare a fossil node you're going to have pop up. But more or less, that's going to get you pumping and absolutely blasting through Delve at the end of the day. And yeah, that's basically, I would recommend maxing these out. But if you're going to go below 600, don't worry about maxing out your darkness res and your light radius anymore. Just focus on sulphite capacity. Get this up to 50, then higher, 50k, then higher. And then, yeah, that's basically where you want to go with that. And that's basically it for your Voltaxic generator. Really easy to set up. Okay, so to sustain Delve, it's pretty straightforward. Number 1, so when I play my Atlas passive tree, more or less I want to target all Delve nodes. Now, you can do this without like obstructing other mechanics. For example, I like playing settlers as well because I like offline miners going off and making me currency while I'm delving. But basically, I just travel up through these frantic mining nodes. I target straight to Packed with Energy and Guarded Hordes. I don't waste my time going to the Price of Progress because it's not worth it. I'll come back up and grab mining byproducts, and then I'll go and grab these sulfite infusion nodes. That's it. Like, you can do whatever you want with your tree. You can configure it for boss rush, you can configure it for harvest, you can do whatever other mechanic that you want to play. This is my basic setup to playing my Delve Atlas at the end of the day. Now, when I tackle maps, really, the only thing that you need to bear in mind is you just need to have a sulfite scarab. So they changed this over time. Now these scarabs are absolutely dirt cheap. So I'll give you an idea of what the price of these scarabs are. And I hope this doesn't drive the price of them up by me advertising this. But sulfite scarabs, because Delve is such a niche mechanic, are literally worth 12 to the 7, right? So if I had one chaos, they go 1 for 1. But in bulk, like, they're dirt cheap. Now you're going to be making enough chaos from just farming Delve and Resonators and whatnot to just absolutely buy as many of these as you need. Like, they're not very expensive. So the 1.6 to the chaos right now, they have gotten a little bit more expensive, but basically the map owner gets 150 more sulfite. Now, originally there was like a rotor strategy that people used to do, and you could still do rotors, like if you've got people that you want to group with, but seriously, like 3 maps and I get like 35,000 sulfite, 4 maps for 50,000 sulfite's pretty good. If you quality your maps as well with chisels, that's also going to increase the amount of sulfite. That's my experience with it. Some people might disagree. I feel you get more sulfite from that. And obviously the harder the maps, things like that, will attribute to more sulfite gain as well. But yeah, that's basically it to sustain Delve. So you run 3 like T15, T16 maps with one of these bad boys in. And yeah, you're back in Delve in 3 maps time, and also it just gets you out of the Delve a little bit, so you can get your bearings, so you can go back down and keep crawling through the deep. Okay, so general strategies for Delve. Now, I attack Delve in 2 ways. So the first way is the obvious one: you can dig deep, right? So I'm down to about 600 depth here, and by the way, you can just type in like depth like 350, it'll take you to 350, right? So, you know, just so you know. So we could go to depth 600, okay? And this will take you down to depth 600. People have chatted me before for not knowing that, and obviously I now do. Now, there's a couple of different strategies that you can take. Now, my particular strategy that I like is farming between 250 to 350 depth, right? So if we go to 350, okay? Now we do what's called horizontal farming. So basically what that means is you literally just go horizontal, and the idea is to travel from Azurite node to Azurite node as much as possible, looking for time loss so that we have 200 chaos right there, for example. And then basically any other valuable nodes, molten cavities, we have like another, was it 69 chaos there? We could get some, you know, boss rush items there and things like that. Basically, you just go horizontally, right? Now that's the strategy that I generally tell people. So 250 to 350, I found to be pretty optimum for most builds. And also the other thing to bear in mind when you're farming Delve is the speed to which you farm Delve. You don't need to go into all the darkness crevices, and we'll do a Delve line very shortly, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. But basically, you don't need to go into all the darkness crevices or anything like that. But yeah, so 250 to 350 horizontal farm strategy basically is one that I always advocate. Now, the other alternative to that is the conventional way, which is just dig down deep. The problem that I have with digging down deep is, number one, you need to have a character that can do that, right? So, for example, my chieftain that I'm running here can do that, right? It can dig down to about 700-800, and you'll notice like Steve is at like some ridiculous depth, like 6,000 with Molten Striker Zenith. Not every build is made the same. Even if you have insane DPS, defense is basically one of the biggest things that makes your character strong in Delve, being able to take big hits, because you will get hit. Now, there were things like ZHP builds back in the day. They were icicle miners, stuff like that. That stuff doesn't exist anymore. And also, I also don't recommend playing evasion-based builds in Delve. And the reason why is flicker spiders. They will instantly destroy you. There's just too many things in Delve that can take you down. Now, builds like RF, things like that, people always ask me about builds like RF and how they go on farming Delve. 250 to 350 is a good depth, probably about 600 peak. The reason why is because there is sort of like a curve that you reach where you need to have a certain amount of DPS. So the other questions I do get is how much DPS should I have, for example? So if you're punching down at about depth 600, you want about 10 to 20 mil DPS, more or less. You want to start targeting around 200 to 300k EHP as well, and keep increasing. Some other things to bear in mind when you're digging down deep is you really need to focus on overcapping resistances, capping your chaos resistances as well. You need to have corrupted blood immunity because that comes up quite a lot. In particular, when you're taking down the Val boss in Delve as well. And you also need a ton of armor. So armor stackers do prevail very well in Delve because of this reason. Strength stackers are very strong because of these reasons. And that's what makes things like Molten Strikers Zenith very powerful. High levels of DPS as well. A lot of projectiles generally tend to help in Delve as well. So projectile skills, even though I use Sunder. All these things contribute to a better experience in Delve. Now, fighting bosses in Delve, so some people would be like, oh, I can't kill this Crystal King. Basically, that point, it's a gear check, right? You can get Crystal Kings in Delve that just absolutely one-tap you, no matter how many mirrors you put into your build, right? There are some builds that can just do Crystal King really easily, but yeah, there are some Crystal Kings that exist in Delve that are just impossible. Though some builds defy that too. So the more currency you put in builds, obviously the better the build, the more you're going to be able to do it. Usually what I say is by about depth 700 to 800, you really need a Mage Blood at that point, because you need to do things like enkindling orb your flasks and whatnot to get them to really push over the top of your limits. And that's when we're talking about like big money delving, and that's why you see a lot of deep delvers with absolutely insane gear, because deep delve is, even in the not profitable leagues in Delve, is still a relatively profitable mechanic for somebody that's dedicated to delving. Delving, the other question I get a lot with Delve and the strategies that I deploy, how many div per hour can I make? It's entirely dependent on the RNG in Delve itself. It's dependent on your character's ability to traverse through Delve and the speed to which you can travel biomes, and all different factors that go into it. I hate the div per hour argument because nobody can guarantee how many div per hour that you make. For example, if I get a Crown of the Tyrant drop off a Crystal King, I've made 27 div in that hour, plus whatever other div I've made. For the next hour, I may not see another Crystal King. I may not see another Crystal King for another whole day. So that means my hourly div rate drops based on whatever resonators or standard currency I can get dropping. So that's why I don't like that conversation topic, because it's just ridiculous. I find that like anyone who guaranteeing a div per hour rate in a mechanic is a wild concept, because RNG exists and there's no way to know what you're realistically going to get. But that's basically the two strategies. So to recap, you can dig down vertically, but you need a bigger and chunkier character. Or you can stick between 250 and 300 and go horizontally. And basically you just blast through and it's a good fun old time at the end of the day. I personally prefer to play the horizontal strategy. And this is what a lot of delvers and a lot of players that I guess have followed my guides do. And it's relatively, it's relatively profitable. Now, things like Quartz Flask, Quicksilver Flask definitely help. I have both of those on mine. You can basically run through packs, and I'll show you in a moment my strategy of how you basically go and you run through columns. But yeah, that's basically the strategies that I generally advocate for. That being said, let's load up a Delve column and I'll show you exactly what you do. Now, the other question that people tend to ask me is, should you farm hidden walls and or the darkness? I would say if you want to farm it, go crazy, do it. So we need to have our war cries up. So as you can see, this is the benefit of Quartz Flask. If you don't have stun immunity or Quartz Flask, you're going to have a bad time in Delve. So see here, I could basically just choose to go straight, but I want to actually go into the darkness here. So I'll go into the darkness, drop a flare, and then basically pick up whatever's in there and run back or leap slam back. You want to stay in the light 24/7. So basically we're going to do this node, and then we'll take the horizontal node next, right? Because this is just horizontal farming. As you'll notice, my character can run depth 700. We're at 357 right now, and it's relatively easy. And this is what I talk about when I say you want to have a pretty like easy, run in Delve, because you're going to make a lot more currency in farming a lot more volume than you will in farming harder volume and struggling and dying a lot. Also, it's less enjoyable when you're on the edge of your seat in Delve. It's more enjoyable when you're no-braining Delve, because this is where people get stuck with it, like, oh, Delve is painful, it's a bad mechanic, because you've pushed your character too far, and the problem with that is it's just not fun when you're not winning, right? So we all like that endorphin hit. And see, with about, 1200, that's 3 resonators, 4 resonators, so we've just made, like, however many chaos, 3 potentially 3 chaos per 4, which is about, what, 12 chaos there. All right, so we keep basically going. Another thing to bear in mind when you're running Delve columns too, so you'll just find that there, that's pretty cool. We could sell that for like 1 or 2 C. But basically, you just want to keep an eye on the mini-map. I'm actually never looking at the actual screen because I trust my build. You have to trust your build. So see this? I saw the wall. I go pop a flare at the wall. I then throw dynamite at the wall. Oh, Resonator cache. Bam. We're also at Hidden Riches. We get a lot of those when you go into darkness. So I don't necessarily always farm darkness these days. It used to be a really bad habit of mine, but these days, it's up to you. So same deal, pop a flare, basically run in, collect the Azurite, run back out, and then rinse and repeat. So we just basically, we're always looking where the minecart's going, and then where the minecart goes, it'll slow down, and then we can go run off and go investigate. So dynamite cache, and then, oh, we have fundamental fossil. You could sell those for a little bit. The other thing you also want to have is just spare flares, because you never know if you're going to get stuck. So always keep your flares up. We got more Azurite there. Now, you don't have to pick all these things up. I don't always pick all these things up, but just for the example, I'm just showing you where I'm looking. So see here, basically I can see that there's something here. So I'm going to go up here. Oh, bam, lost wealth. Oh, got another Chaos Orb. You can pretty quickly see if you're strapped for cash, this is a very easy way to make it up. So this node's a nice easy one. But that basically gives you an example of like how I will delve. Now, obviously I slowed my pace down. Usually I'm like blasting really quickly. But yeah, same deal. Like you would just follow horizontally with this strategy that I'm running here. Same deal. You're always looking to see if there's like columns that or hidden walls, things like that. But you want to focus on the mini map more than often than actually focusing on the screen itself. And that's basically how I delve. Okay, so currency farming strategies. This is where we started to get into the money-making schemes that we can go with. So number one is the obvious one, which is farming Azurite. So basically the first strategy that you can use in Delve is focus on these Azurite nodes. The lower down you go or the deeper you go, the more Azurite you're going to get. And then basically, so you basically just want to target node to node and pick up as much Azurite as you can. As you can see, I only got 2,000. And then primeval cities as well, you're also going to want to try and get the Azurite caches. Now, this is the Resonator method of making money. So basically, you're going to go to Nico, you're going to purchase items, you're going to buy bulk resonators. So Control-Shift on the keyboard lets you buy in bulk. Then we're going to go back to our trader. In this case, we'll just go back to our hideout. So we'll go talk to Faustus. Then we're going to go to the market exchange. Simply put, bam. We've got 24 in our holding right now. Sell it for chaos, right? Now we're going to make 40 chaos off of that. The market is currently dropping, which isn't great. But anyway, so that's strategy number one. All right, easy chaos. And then once you got enough chaos orbs, then you're going to convert that to divines. 218, bam. Place order, buy, easy div. All right, bam. You can do that constantly with resonators. That's strategy number one. So let's talk about the second strategy that you can go about making currency in Delve. Okay, so the next strategy I always call boss rush, right? So basically you can pick a depth at any depth, right? So I usually recommend 250 to 350 and go horizontal. What we're really looking for this league in particular are Crystal Kings, and the reason why is because of All's Uprising, Voices cards, and Crown of the Tyrants. We'll put them up on the screen and we'll have a look at the prices now. Now, if you get All's Uprising drop, there's a pretty big variation in pricing this league. There's many that are just not worth a lot. However, the All's Uprising for Malevolence currently is trading at about 14 to 15 div, give or take. And there's a lot on the market currently. Now, second to that, Crown of the Tyrant drops from the King. This is worth 25 to 27 div. Currently, it's dropped slightly in the last 2 days. And the last drop to look out for is the Luminous Trove, which drops off the Crystal King, which is about 3 div a piece. So while it seems like it's not worth a lot, it's generally worth a lot. But those are basically the 3 key drops off the Crystal King that you'll get at the moment that's worth a bit of bank. Okay, so the final way to make currency in Delve is by target farming specific nodes, and we'll talk about this in a bit more detail. So As you sort of go into the Atlas chart, you'll see things like different, uh, Resonator nodes or fossil nodes, time loss caverns, for example. These will drop glyphic nodes, and basically a whole slew of other things. So that's time lost as well. So, you could sort of diverge down there, go find that. It's worth 210 chaos at the moment. Each of those is worth 210 chaos, so that's easily almost a div. Crystal Spires are worth about 100 chaos, something like that. So basically, there's a fair bit of target farming that exists in Delve, and we're going to go through some of the stuff that's worth some currency. So more or less, these are the things that you're looking for. So Crystal Spire nodes, you'll get hollow fossils. Time Loss Caverns, you'll get glyphics. Molten Cavities, you'll get faceted fossils. And Humid Fissures, you'll get fractured fossils, right? These you want to look at. They more or less drop a lot more commonly at about depth 300, and this is where you're going to make a lot of currency. If anything, Boss Rush is nowhere near as profitable as what this is going to be. That being said, you'll run into bosses every now and again, and then basically, you'll pick up huge currency potentially from those encounters as you're searching for this. So there's a bit of a symbiotic relationship between farming Azurite, looking for these particular nodes, and getting bosses in between everything. Now, some things to look out for in particular that will drop. So different chambers that you should be on the lookout for are these Necromancer chambers, for example, and we'll go through why. And the big one right now are the Curse chambers. So these only pop up in Abyssal Depths, and they contain mana or curse items. We'll have a look why in a moment. So basically, if we're going through Necromancer chambers, some things you want to look at will be Convoking Wands in particular with minions are aggressive. Now, this is mispriced. This is worth way more because this is a fracture on the trade site. So the yellow means it's fractured, so it's baked into the item. And basically you can re-roll the item as many times as you want until you get the right roll. But for any other standard drop, you're looking at about 3 div with just the roll on there, right? So you could just sell it raw on the market. You'll make about 3 div. These drop not so commonly, but they still commonly drop, and you get access to these all throughout the delve. So always hit the Necromancer nodes. The second one is if you somehow manage to land a fracture, you're looking at anywhere up to 50 div for one of these. This is incredibly rare and extremely valuable. So 50 to 60 div is about the price mark for a fractured minions are aggressive in Delve. Then we start looking at the increased skill effect duration. Curse skills have increased skill effect duration. These are really common. In fact, last night I had 3 rings drop from one node. I made 21 div out of it. So it's really, really lucrative at the moment, depending on the different rolls that are on the ring as well. You really don't want like the negative ring rolls here from the Mirror of Calandra content because there are downsides to that, right? But basically the Delve rings have what's called an underground mod, and that's what these are. So you can offload these for a minimum of 5 div each, and if you have other things like life, stuff like that, these prices go up, but they start at about 5 div each. Now you might hit a node and get 4 of these rings drop in one cluster, you've made 20 div off one node. So look out for the curse nodes. And the same goes, if you hit a fracture, then you're looking at anywhere up to these prices escalate based on the duration. Anywhere based on the duration from 10 div all the way up to people selling for 200 div, and there's not very many on the market. So if you get these and then you hit these, this is worth some serious bank at the moment. And they're more common than you'd think. And this is just a duplicated window. Then we have +1 number of specters. At any base, you're looking at minimum 1 div, and we start to get to 2 div for better bases and things like that. For just +1 specter, this drops from the Necromancer nodes. And then if you hit a fracture, easy 30 div. That's simple. It's really profitable. And then obviously for your glyphics, your hollow and faceted and fractured, those are the nodes that we spoke about at the very start. So Crystal Spire is where you're going to get hollow fossils, and hollow fossils currently are trading at 105 chaos. They are very common after depth 300. Then we go back, we look at Time Lost Caverns, which are glyphics. They're trading at about 210. Very common after 300. Well, not very common, but they are common after 300. And then basically Molten Cavity is faceted. Faceted is currently worth 69 chaos. So pretty, and they're pretty common and they're very easy to do. And then the last one is Fractured. So these drop in Human Fissures. And these are currently worth about 25 chaos each. So just targeting nodes in Delve is incredibly profitable. You can also get, if you hit things like for example, physical damage nodes. We talk about these when we look at, for example, these nodes here. So nesting grounds, restless rubble. These can drop curse on hit rings. So if you're looking for curse rings, these are easy ways to get them. Restless rubble, frigid recess, all these hollow, these all drop curse rings. These are these sweltering burrows as well. Generally, they'll drop curse rings or something that is like an elemental affliction item or something of that nature. You can also get animalistic items as well. So that's like aspect of the cat, aspect of the spider, all that sort of stuff drops in these echoing layers as well. So if you see them, they could drop something that's really valuable that you could actually use if you're running like an animalistic item, or if you want to sell animalistic items. Even better if you get it as a fracture, then it's super rare and you're going to be making tons of bank. Moral of the story, there's a lot of stuff to target farm and delve, and this is just scratching the surface at the end of the day. Okay, and finally, you guys always ask me this, but what builds can delve? So one of which is my Sunder build, which there's like 4 build up guide updates. I'll put all that in the description. You can follow that if you want. Most of the builds on my channel can delve as well. Well, if not all the builds I play delve, because I play delve. But if you want to have a look at other different builds, like obviously you can YouTube it, but you could also just go to POE Ninja and you could just filter for depth. So we use the ladder setting, filter for depth. And then basically you could have a look at the builds that are excelling. So this one here is just your Molten Striker Zenith. You have Frenzy of Onslaught Slayer, which is currently delving at 2000 depth. We've got Shock Nova, which looks like a Molnir build, which is Mana Stacker. We've got Smite, again, 251k. That's probably an Armor Stacker. It is, in fact, an Armor Stacker. Basically, you'll be able to see all the different builds that are excelling at whatever depths here, right? So it'll give you an idea of how low it can go. And you can filter for pretty much anything you want to play. Like, it's just up to you at the end of the day. It'll give you a really good idea how to spec into different things. For example, people ask me about Righteous Fire. Lowest one is at depth 800. That's not too bad. Looks like he's got... Oh, no, it's different. So that's an option there. We've got Volcanic Fissure of Snaking, for example, depth 1000 reach. That'd be pretty rough because that build is not the tankiest build, but it's very good DPS. But yeah, you could go through Forbidden Rite. It's actually not surprising that that one's at that depth, and these will be Mage Blood builds, I bet. Yep, Mage Blood makes sense, and new items. There you go, new build to look at. That's pretty cool. But yeah, you could basically, this is an easy way to see what builds are playable at whatever depth, and yeah, you could basically pick any build you want from here. This is pretty much the easiest way to find out what builds are good. I'll put a link in the description to this, but just bear in mind, just have to change the ladder setting to depth, and this will give you all the builds that are currently delving at whatever depth they're delving at. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the video. I hope this is helpful, and I'll timestamp everything in the description, give you all the links and resources that you need. Link to the Crystal King video if you want to know how to take down the Crystal King. But anyway, yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, I guess if you've got any questions, feel free to hit me up. Now, you will say, oh, Jorgen, how do I go about hidden walls, right? People ask me about hidden walls all the time, okay? There's basically 3 potential paths that can go to a hidden wall. This will be the last thing that I'll leave you guys with. So if I was going to tackle a hidden wall, number 1, I would hit these 3 nodes up here. I would hit these 2 nodes, and it's likely a path that goes either direct or like that, or it could come down like that, or it could come down like that, generally. Won't ever be more than, I think, 3 like quadrants away or whatnot, or 3 tiles away. It's usually within like 2 tiles or whatnot in this vicinity, right? That's basically the best approach to hidden wall. There's no exact science to farming hidden walls. It's just basically go in darkness, run around, which you can do. You don't have to actually click on a node to activate. You can just run through a node previously already passed. Potentially it could also be coming from here, but that would be unlikely. I would say it would probably be from here to here. But yeah, that would be the last thing that I'll leave you guys with. But yeah, otherwise, enjoy delving, and don't forget to stop by the stream and like and sub to the channel and all that other stuff. And I will see you guys in the next video.